Samson came back for his wife. But at the doorway, he learned she had been given to another man. The door closed, and something in Samson opened. Not grief, not forgiveness, rage. And one man walking back to what he thought was still his. But when he arrived in Timnah, he found out something had happened while he was gone. Something humiliating, something irreversible, something that turned a broken wedding into a national disaster. Because this time, Samson doesn't tear apart a lion. He tears open a war. This is episode 2, The Fire in the Fields. And before this is over, Samson will burn Philistine grain, strike down his enemies, be betrayed by his own people, kill 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey, and still end up crying out to God for water. Some time passes, the anger cools, or at least Samson thinks it does, and he returns to Timnah. Not with an army, not with a sword, not with a threat. He comes with a young goat. That matters, because in that world, this is not just food. This is a gesture, a peace offering, a husband returning to his wife, a man trying to walk back into the room he stormed out of. He says, "I will go in to my wife in the chamber," but her father stands in the doorway, and he does not let him in. Imagine that moment. Samson standing outside the house, gift in his hands, dust on his feet. The man who tore a lion apart, stopped by a closed door. Then her father says the words that light the fuse. "I really thought you hated her, so I gave her to your companion, not to a stranger, not to some distant man, to one of the 30, one of the men from the feast, one of the men connected to the riddle, the betrayal, the humiliation." And Samson realizes they didn't just take the answer, they took the woman too. The father knows this is bad. He knows Samson is dangerous, so he tries to fix it the only way he knows how. He says, "Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please, take her instead." And that sentence tells you everything about how little they understood Samson. They thought the wound was simple. Replace one woman with another. Replace one bride with another bride. Replace one insult with a bargain. But Samson's problem was never just romance. It was shame. It was betrayal. It was the feeling that everyone in Philistine territory could touch his life, move his future, use his weakness, and then smile like nothing happened. And that is the dangerous thing about Samson. He does not always know how to process pain. He only knows how to turn it into force. So he says, "This time, I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm." That is not forgiveness. That is a warning. And the father standing in the doorway still has no idea what he just awakened. Now watch how strange this gets. Samson does not march into a city. He does not challenge their soldiers. He does not go after the 30 men first. He goes after what the Philistines trust most, their harvest. The Bible says Samson went and caught 300 foxes, or jackals, small wild animals common to the land, fast, frightened, hard to control, and he takes them 2 by 2, ties their tails together, places a torch between each pair, then lights the torches, and suddenly the fields begin to move. Fire runs through the standing grain. Fire tears through the stacked grain. Fire spreads into the olive orchards, the vineyards, the work of an entire season. This is not random destruction. This is economic warfare. The Philistines controlled Israel's weapons, their movement, their dignity. But now Samson touches the thing that controls them, their food, their wealth, their future. And from a distance, Samson watches the smoke rise. One man, no army, no battle plan, just a wound. a flame, and enough strength to make a nation afraid. Fire always asks a question. Who did this? And the Philistines get their answer. Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he took his wife and gave her to his companion. Now listen carefully. They know why Samson did it. They know the father's decision caused this. They know the wedding betrayal started this. But they still do what violent systems always do. They punish the vulnerable. They go to the woman. The same woman they threatened in episode 1. The same woman they said they would burn if she did not betray Samson. And now, they do exactly what they promised. They burn her and her father with fire. The woman who betrayed Samson to save her family loses her family anyway. That is the cruelty of fear. It promises survival. Then it collects everything. And when Samson hears what they have done, something in him goes cold. Samson said, "If this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I will quit." Do you hear that? Even now, Samson thinks revenge has an ending. One more strike, one more act, one more payment, then I'll stop. But revenge is never satisfied. It always says, just one more. And Samson attacks. The Bible says he struck them hip and thigh with a great blow. It is a brutal phrase, a total defeat, a violent breaking of the men responsible. No speeches, no negotiations, no courtroom, just Samson moving through Philistine men like judgment with skin on, and then he leaves. He goes down and stays in the cleft of the rock of Atum, a cave, a hiding place, a crack in the stone. The strongest man in Israel is now alone in a hole in the earth, and that is where the next betrayal finds him. The Philistines do not let this go. They come up and camp in Judah. Their soldiers spread out across Lehi, and the men of Judah ask the obvious question, "Why have you come up against us?" And the Philistines answer, "We have come to bind Samson, to do to him as he did to us." Now this is the moment Israel should wake up. This is the moment they should say, "Samson is fighting the people who oppressed us for 40 years. Maybe God is doing something." But oppressed people do not always recognize deliverance. Sometimes they are more afraid of freedom than chains. So 3,000 men of Judah go down to the cleft of the rock of Etam, not to join Samson, to arrest him. They say, "Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What then is this that you have done to us? Not to them, to us." That is what slavery does to the soul. It makes the oppressed defend the comfort of their oppression. And Samson looks at his own people and realizes they are more afraid of Philistine anger than they are hungry for freedom. Samson answers them simply, "As they did to me, so have I done to them." But Judah does not want context. Judah wants quiet. Judah wants the Philistines gone. Judah wants the problem handed over. So they say, "We have come down to bind you, that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines." And Samson makes one request. "Swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves," because he knows what he can do. If his own brothers strike him, he may not stop. So they bind him with 2 new ropes. New ropes, strong ropes, fresh ropes that have never been weakened. And they lead him up from the rock. Picture it. Samson walking bound, Judah surrounding him, Philistines waiting in the distance, the deliverer being delivered by his own people into enemy hands. And the tragedy is not that Samson is tied up. The tragedy is that Israel helped tie the ropes. When Samson comes to Lehi, the Philistines shout, They think it is over. They think Judah has handed them the problem gift-wrapped. But then, the Spirit of the Lord rushes upon him, and the ropes on his arms become like flax touched by fire. They melt off his hands. Samson looks down. No sword, no spear, no army. Again, just his hands. And then he sees it. A fresh jawbone of a donkey. Not a polished weapon. Not something forged in a furnace. Something lying on the ground. Ordinary, unclean, almost insulting. But in Samson's hands, ordinary things become terrifying. He grabs the jawbone, and then he strikes. One man against a crowd, dust rising, men shouting, bodies falling, the battlefield collapsing into panic. And by the time it is over, 1,000 Philistine men are dead. Then Samson speaks like a poet again. With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have struck down 1,000 men. And he throws the jawbone away. That place gets a name, Ramath Lehi, the hill of the jawbone. But victory has a way of revealing what strength cannot fix. Because after killing 1,000 men, Samson is thirsty, not symbolically, literally. The strongest man in the Bible is standing in a field of victory, dying for water. And for the first time in this episode, Samson does not talk to Philistines. He does not talk to Judah. He does not talk to a woman. He talks to God. He cries out, "You have granted this great salvation by the hand of your servant. And shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" Do you hear the tension? He knows God gave the victory, but he still fears dying empty. And God splits open the hollow place at Lehi. Water comes out. Samson drinks. His spirit returns. He revives. So he names it En Hakore, the spring of the one who called. Not the spring of the strong man, not the spring of the warrior, not the spring of the lion killer, the spring of the one who called. And Samson judged Israel in the days of the Philistines for 20 years. But do not mistake survival for surrender. Samson has learned he can break ropes, burn fields, defeat armies, call on God and live. But he has not learned how to rule himself. And soon, the strongest man in Israel will walk into Gaza at night and prove that sometimes the gates you carry away are still not the gates you need God to break. Episode 3 drops next week. And what Delilah does to him makes everything in this episode look like a warm-up. Episode 1 is already on the channel if you need to catch up.